Now, after we made that talk about how um, every atom is even made from more fundamental physics, we ask ourselves an interesting question, which is, can we really actually touch anything? Now, let's define touch as matter on matter. Let's say if I was touching this pen, without any doubts and results, my finger is touching that pen. But what if I told you that you technically, when you're sitting on a chair right now, your body is actually not touching the chair? Or maybe I can say that you are even hovering above the chair. Now, you're not technically hovering, but there's this very, very small gap between our body and the chair that we can barely see it, and it happens at an atomic level. Okay, we do know that everything, our body, the chair, is made from atoms. And these atoms have, when two of atoms come together, they tend to repel each other. Why? Because there are electrons in, the outer shell. It's that when two things come together, the atoms can't really bond with each other unless there's some sort of chemical bond where the two atoms share electrons. But then we might ask, how can we feel the texture of something? And I believe that this is something that only our nerves receptors can feel. That repulsion of the electrons is what makes us feel something, feel the texture of something. Now we may say, how can I cut a piece of paper, scissor, or how may I cut a piece of cardboard atom? But instead of splitting the atoms or something, we would use a scissor blade. The scissor blade atoms would pave way to move through, and then the cardboard atoms would just move to the sides and eventually splitting. In a way, the atoms of the scissor is just pushing away the atoms of the cardboard. And therefore, my point is that even though the scissor was able to cut, the paper or the cardboard, theoretically, it did not touch the paper or the cardboard. So, my point here is that when we are shaking hands, hugging, or kissing someone, we're not actually touching them. So, it kind of theoretically we are not touching them, so it feels as if though we are always forever alone. And the second thing that you may say is that, why can I hold things? To answer this, I have to say that at the micro level, at the smallest level, nothing is really flat, and that perfectly flat, and friction exists. And I feel that I believe that things stick together by chemical bonds, and that on the surface, since nothing is flat, there are imperfections. So many factors would contribute to why we can hold on things. Cohesion and adhesion and friction, especially. Now, if we really think about it, how do we really make our atoms touch the atoms of the other person? Oh my god. I'd have to say that, first of all, maybe the human has to be radioactive. By radioactive, we will emit some radioactive particles, and in turn this would go into the other person's body, and thus our atoms will touch that person's atom. But totally, that is theoretically that is impossible unless the human is radioactive. And to be radioactive, we have to consume at least 600 bananas, because bananas are somehow radioactive. But I think there's another way that we can be close. I mean, we can theoretically touch each other again, is something called birth. So what is birth? Because birth is when two DNA come and join each other through chemical bonds, and I feel like that is the only way when two people physically touch. So I think that we can say that the only thing that we can touch matter to matter is our parents and the kids. Why? Because we somehow created a chemical bond with them.